Katie. We have The Clue of the Tapping Heels. We are on chapter 11, Bess Plays Cupid. As Nancy slipped from the high beam, people below gasped, others screamed. "Oh, no, no!" George cried. Nancy herself had been terrified for a fraction of a second. In a desperate attempt to save herself, she clung tightly to the beam by one arm. Then, with great effort, she swung her right leg over the beam and gradually pulled herself into an upright position. "Bravo! Bravo!" cried several of the men below her and began to clap. "Yeah! Yeah!" shouted several relieved children. All this time Nancy had managed to hold on to the net. Now she unrolled it, and with a well-placed aim, finally snared the Persian. Its protests at being made a prisoner almost caused Nancy to lose her balance again. There were gasps of dismay from the watching crowd, and a flashbulb went off. Nancy looked down. A photographer had snapped her picture. "Oh dear," she thought, "this whole adventure has been such a mess." The cat had quieted down, and now Nancy inched her way backward, pulling the animal along. Slowly she shinned down the rafter to the crossbeam. "Bess, George, will you catch the cat?" Nancy requested. "Yes, let it go," George replied. Besides the girl's outstretched arms, there were several other willing hands. Nancy dropped the net containing the animal. The Persian was immediately put back into its cage, and Nancy came down the rest of the way safely. The watchers showered her with congratulations. "Thanks a lot," she said, blushing. All she wanted to do now was get back to Berryville. A voice from the onlookers called out, "I'll buy the cat. I like spunky animals. How much is it?" Before Nancy could answer, George spoke up. "The price is higher now." People laughed, and the man called out, "You mean the higher the cat, the higher the price?" "Exactly," George said. "How about having an auction? We'll start with the original price and go up from there." So when someone has an auction, it means they're selling something and people bid on it. Like, so they'll offer an amount of money, and then someone might offer more money, and whoever offers the biggest amount of money gets the item. Nancy was amused and wondered if the scheme would work. "I'll pay exactly the figure you named," a woman said. "And I'll give you $25 more," a man called out. "Anyone bid 25 more? 25 more?" said George, who was beginning to enjoy her role as an auctioneer, so the person who runs the auction. As the bidding went on, Nancy and Bess became more and more astounded. The Persian cat finally sold for over 3 times what the original price had been. When Nancy mentioned to Bess that she wondered if this had been the right thing to do, her chum said quickly, "I thought all along the price for a prize cat was too low. Besides, Miss Carter could certainly use the money." The girls said goodbye to the lovely Persian, which was now resting comfortably in the arms of a teenage girl whose father had purchased it for her. She smiled at the girls. "I just love my new pet." "I'm so glad you do," Nancy said. "Be kind to Abatha." At that moment, the young man who had taken her picture said, "I want it for our local paper. Quite a story. Please tell me your name and address." Nancy did not relish this publicity, but did not see how she could avoid it. She identified herself. "You're from River Heights?" The photographer asked. "Are you related to the famous lawyer Carson Drew?" Bess answered the question. "She certainly is, and she does a lot of detective work in connection with her father's cases." Nancy was embarrassed, but the photographer beamed. "This will make a cool story," he said, putting away his notebook and starting off. "I can't wait to get it in the paper." When the girls reached Miss Carter's home, they found that Mrs. Beeling had returned from River Heights. At once she said to Nancy, "I hope you're not too tired to drive me downtown. I must buy some food." Nancy said she would be glad to take the nurse as soon as she had a chance to freshen up and change her clothes. The 3 girls went upstairs to Miss Carter's room. Hannah Gruen was talking to the actress. Proudly, Nancy opened her purse and took out a large wad of bills. "We sold every cat," she announced. "That's marvelous!" Miss Carter exclaimed. "You girls are wonderful. Why, Nancy, you've given me too much money." The three salesmen giggled. No, I haven't, Nancy said, and then told the story of George auctioning off the last cat. Both women laughed. Good work, said Hannah. Beth spoke up. It's all because Nancy climbed the rafters to get the cat, and twice she nearly fell off. Oh my goodness, Hannah Gruen cried out. Nancy smiled. Don't worry, I'm still in one piece. Miss Carter shook her head. I appreciate all this, she said, but Nancy, you shouldn't have taken the chance. Then she chuckled. You must be as lithe as a kitten yourself. While Bess and George told her about the strange man with the cats at the show, Nancy took a quick shower and changed her clothes. Then she and Mrs. Beeling set off for the shopping center of Berryville. As they entered the parking lot, the nurse suddenly exclaimed, Nancy, there's the man who's looking for Miss Violette. Where? Mrs. Beeling pointed him out. He had parked his red convertible and was now hurrying out to Main Street. Nancy dashed after the tall, handsome man, and in a few moments caught up to him. Pardon me, she said, walking beside him, but are you Mr. Toby Simpson? He looked at her in amazement, then said with a smile, Yes, I am. You don't know me, Nancy said. My name is Nancy Drew, and I'm staying with the woman you call Miss Violette. The actor stopped walking and stared at Nancy. But how do you know? I don't blame you for being surprised, Nancy said, then quickly explained that Miss Carter had found out he had come to the house asking for Miss Violette. By this time, Mrs. Beeling had caught up to them, and Nancy introduced her. The actor smiled. You're the woman who came to the door when I rang and said Miss Violette did not live here. Or live there. That's right. I never heard Miss Carter's stage name. Mr. Simpson said that back in the days when he had been in the plays with her, she had insisted that no one call her by any name except Miss Violette. He had assumed that she had continued the custom. An idea came to Nancy. She said to the actor, If you're not busy this evening, I think it'd be fun if you came to dinner at the house. We could let it be a complete surprise to Miss Carter. The man's eyes lighted up. I can't think of anything I'd rather do, he replied. What time would you like me to get there? Would 7 o'clock be all right? It occurred to Nancy that even if they had a simple dinner, not much time was being allowed for its preparation. 7 o'clock will be fine. I'll be there, and thank you very much. Then goodbye for now, Nancy said. She and Mrs. Beeling hurried off to the market. This is very exciting, the nurse said. Now all we need to do is have the Tapper show up and spoil the show, and I can't understand why the police haven't rounded up somebody in this case. Well, what do you think we should have for dinner? Steak is always safe, Nancy replied. And how about a lemon meringue pie? I'll telephone Hannah to ask if she can make one right away. She dashed off to a street phone while Mrs. Beeling started to shop. It was nearly 6 o'clock by the time they reached home. Bess, intrigued by the thought of a romantic meeting between Miss Violette and Toby Simpson, found it hard not to give away the secret. She and George had set the table. Flowers and candles gave it a very festive air. Hannah Gruen was just putting the meringue on the pie. She had also made a tasty-looking tossed salad with tomatoes and cucumbers. We'll start with the melon, Nancy announced. Then will come the steak, French fries, and string beans. Everyone can help prepare them for cooking. Bess had gone upstairs and suggested that Miss Carter wear one of her most becoming dresses. And I'll comb your hair in a modern style, she offered. What's going on? The actress asked, a suspicious look coming into her eyes. Bess did not answer directly. She said, Don't you think we should celebrate selling all those cats and Nancy rescuing the last one? Miss Carter smiled. I suppose we should. She pointed out a filmy, pale blue dress, and Bess helped her put it on. You look darling, the girl said. Then she started working on the actress's fluffy gray hair. Within a few minutes, Mrs. Carter's long hair was arranged in an attractive style. As she looked in the mirror, the woman smiled. I do look lovely, don't I? A faraway expression came over her face, like I used to when I played in The Dancer and the Fool. Presently, George came upstairs, and together the two girls carried Miss Carter to the first floor. They had dimmed the lights in the dining room so she would not notice the extra place at the table. The girls sat down in the living room with her while Mrs. Beeling and Hannah Gruen were putting the finishing touches on the meal. At exactly 7 o'clock, the front doorbell rang. Nancy went to answer, followed by Bess and George. They had already decided that the meeting between Miss Carter and Mr. Simpson should take place alone in the living room. When Nancy opened the door, she put one finger to her lips and merely said, "Won't you come in?" Mr. Simpson, smiling, stepped into the hall. Nancy pointed out the doorway to the living room and motioned for him to go inside. The girls huddled together, waiting. The next moment, they heard a cry of delight from Miss Violette. "Toby! Toby! You've come back to me!" "Yes, dear. It's been so many years. I lost complete track of you, but today I had a little luck, and thanks to your friend Nancy Drew, here I am." There was a long silence, and the girls figured the couple were having a loving embrace. A few minutes later, Miss Carter called the girls inside. She formally introduced Mr. Simpson, then asked for a complete explanation of the whole affair. Nancy quickly told the story, then the three girls said they must go out to the kitchen to help. On the way, Bess whispered excitedly, "I'm so happy I could just burst." "I feel pretty good about the whole thing myself," George replied. When the girls entered the kitchen, Hannah and Mrs. Beeling wanted to know about the meeting between the actress and the actor. When they heard it had been a happy one, both were pleased. A little later, when everyone was seated at the table and grace had been said, Miss Carter told the others a little about her early life on the stage. "Then finally I played opposite Toby and we began to date," she explained. The actor had not taken his eyes from the woman, and now he said, "I played the part of the fool in the story for so long, I guess I lived the part of it in my everyday life. In any case, I was a fool to think my work was more important than marrying my leading lady." Bess had been touched by the story and the meeting. Now she looked directly at the couple and said, "It's not too late." Her remark was so unexpected that there was dead silence for several seconds. Bess, embarrassed, apologized profusely, but Toby smiled at her gratefully. "You've said the very thing I wanted to," he told her, and then looked lovingly at Miss Carter. "As soon as you are well again, what say we try it?" Everyone waited anxiously for her answer. Taking Toby Simpson's hand and kissing him on the cheek, she said, "I'll try it if you think I can be of help to you." "Oh, you can." Now there was real rejoicing. Everyone was so excited it was hard to settle down to the dinner in front of them. But after a while, the conversation got around to the reason Nancy and her friends had come to Miss Carter's house. Toby Simpson wanted to hear the story in detail. When Nancy revealed the fact that she had suspected a young man named Gus Woonton, Mr. Simpson frowned. "I once met a couple named Woonton," he said. "I believe they had a son, Gus." Ooh. And that's the end of chapter 11. We'll have